The silence that preceded the announcement was heavy enough to be felt across continents. Fans sensed something was wrong long before any words were spoken, noticing subtle absences and an unfamiliar stillness surrounding names they followed so closely. When Sam Heughan finally addressed the situation, the weight of that silence broke all at once. What he confirmed was not dramatic in delivery, but devastating in impact. The news concerned Caitriona Balfe, a figure deeply connected to Sam both professionally and emotionally in the public imagination. His words were careful, restrained, and clearly chosen to minimize harm, yet nothing could soften their meaning. There was no attempt to disguise the sadness behind formal language. It was clear this was not a rumor being addressed, but a reality being acknowledged. What made the confirmation so painful was its tone. Sam did not speak as an actor managing a narrative, but as someone carrying a responsibility he did not want. His voice lacked the confidence and ease audiences were used to hearing, replaced instead by sincerity and visible heaviness. That shift alone told people this moment mattered far beyond headlines. Before this confirmation, there had been weeks of speculation fueled by absence rather than evidence. Caitriona's reduced public presence, changes in routine, and a noticeable quiet around projects led fans to worry quietly. Many hoped the silence meant privacy, not trouble. Sam's words removed that hope, replacing it with a shared sense of loss. Social media reacted instantly, not with outrage, but with grief. Messages of support flooded timelines in multiple languages, reflecting the global reach of both figures. This was not heartbreak tied to fiction or fandom fantasy, but to concern for a real person. The emotional response felt collective, as though millions were processing the same news at once. What stood out most was Sam's restraint in what he chose not to say. He avoided details, timelines, and explanations, focusing instead on acknowledgement. That decision signaled respect, reminding listeners that sadness does not require full disclosure to be understood. Sometimes, confirmation alone is enough to change everything. For longtime followers, the moment carried additional weight because of the history Sam and Caitriona shared. Years of collaboration had created a bond visible even when unspoken. Seeing Sam step forward to confirm sad news about her felt like watching someone protect another's dignity in a moment of vulnerability. That protective instinct resonated deeply. Media outlets quickly picked up the story, but many adjusted their tone unusually fast. Sensationalism gave way to caution, headlines softened, and commentary focused on empathy rather than speculation. It was a rare moment when the industry collectively recognized the gravity of what had been confirmed. The sadness demanded restraint. By the end of the day, one truth was clear. This was not a story that needed embellishment or analysis to feel powerful. It was enough to know that something painful had occurred, and that Sam Heughan had chosen honesty over silence. The heartbreak was global because the connection was real, and the confirmation made it impossible to look away. The days following the confirmation unfolded in a strange quiet, one shaped less by noise and more by restraint. Fans around the world seemed to move in unison, lowering their voices online and choosing empathy over speculation. What lingered was not curiosity, but concern, the kind that respects distance while still holding space for grief. In that collective pause, the weight of the news continued to settle. For Sam Heughan, the responsibility did not end with speaking out. Those close to him described a period of reflection, marked by careful choices and deliberate silence. He did not return to public life with his usual energy, nor did he retreat entirely. Instead, he appeared to navigate a narrow path between acknowledgement and protection, mindful of the impact his words could have. Attention naturally turned toward Caitriona Balfe, whose absence now carried deeper meaning. Her quiet presence, or lack of it, was no longer a source of rumor but of understanding. Many recognized that silence can be a form of healing, not avoidance. The lack of updates became a boundary, one the public gradually learned to respect. Media coverage continued, but with a noticeably different tone. Rather than chasing details, many outlets focused on the emotional significance of Sam's confirmation. Commentary shifted toward compassion, highlighting the human reality behind professional success. It was an uncommon moment when restraint became the dominant narrative rather than controversy. Fans expressed their support in ways that avoided intrusion. Letters, messages, and tributes emphasized gratitude for past work rather than demands for answers. This collective response suggested an understanding that not every story belongs to the audience, even when the connection feels personal. The heartbreak was shared, but it was also carefully held. What made the situation especially poignant was the history between Sam and Caitriona. Years of collaboration had built a visible trust that extended beyond scripted performances. That history amplified the emotional weight of the confirmation, reminding people that professional partnerships can carry genuine care. The sadness felt authentic because the bond had always seemed real. As time passed, the initial shock gave way to reflection. Conversations began focusing on resilience, privacy, and the limits of public access. The story evolved from a moment of heartbreak into a broader discussion about empathy in the digital age. It challenged audiences to consider how they engage with difficult news involving real people. Behind the scenes, industry voices acknowledged how rare such moments of collective restraint are. Usually, confirmation fuels escalation, but here it prompted pause. The absence of further detail discouraged sensationalism rather than inviting it. That outcome reflected the tone Sam had set from the beginning. For many, the lasting impact of this episode lay in its quiet dignity. There were no dramatic updates, no attempts to reclaim attention, and no effort to transform sadness into narrative momentum. Instead, there was acceptance that some truths stand on their own. The heartbreak did not need amplification to be felt. In the end, the global response revealed something unexpected. When treated with honesty and care, even painful news can foster solidarity rather than spectacle. Sam Heughan's confirmation did not close the story, but it reframed it, allowing space for compassion to lead. And in that space, millions found a shared moment of understanding rather than explanation. In the weeks that followed, the absence of further statements slowly became a form of closure. Not because questions were answered, but because the tone had been set. This was a moment for respect, not pursuit. The quiet held its own meaning, allowing emotions to breathe without being forced into updates. What many carried forward was a renewed awareness of boundaries. The situation reminded audiences that empathy does not require proximity, and support does not require access. Sometimes, the most compassionate response is to step back and let time do its work. Long after headlines faded, the feeling remained. A shared pause, a collective understanding that some stories are heavier than curiosity. And in that understanding, the heartbreak found a measure of peace, unspoken, but widely felt. As conversations slowly quieted, many fans found themselves revisiting earlier moments with new perspective. Scenes once viewed as simple performances now felt layered with meaning, reminding people how closely art and emotion can intertwine when bonds are genuine. There was also a growing appreciation for how the situation had been handled. No theatrics, no exploitation of grief, just a firm insistence on dignity. That restraint stood out in an industry often defined by excess, leaving a lasting impression of maturity and care. For some, the episode became a reminder of why connection matters in the first place. The sadness resonated not because of spectacle, but because it revealed vulnerability in people usually seen as untouchable. That humanity bridged distance more powerfully than any statement could.